Hello everyone, it's Karen. As you might be able to tell, I have been sick. So I just want to apologize for my voice and the congested sound that you might be hearing. I don't know if I had a really bad cold or the flu or what. It's still going on, but I could not wait any longer to tell you about this book, Journal of a Black Queer Nurse, and this is by Britney Daniels. So please stay tuned for the review. This is the story of a Black masculine presenting tattooed lesbian and her headfirst crusade into the nursing world, the COVID-19 pandemic and oppression. It's a story about integrity, perseverance, and triumph. For me, triumph for a Black, queer, working-class nurse reveals itself in the form of being able to confidently and fearlessly advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves. Daily, I arm myself with more knowledge so that I can provide the most effective and intentional care for the people who are relying on us. We refuse to be silenced, devalued, or disregarded. Okay, so I want to start out this review by saying that I met Britney in person at LitFest in Chicago last weekend, and she reminded me a lot of Adam K. So if you have read This Is Going to Hurt or 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas, this is going to be a book that you are going to love because she is absolutely hilarious. And it also has the same medical vibe. She's a nurse, Adam K is a doctor, but same deal, right? She's just absolutely hilarious. So as the title says, this is the story of a Black queer nurse. She really dives into all of the ways that she is impacted by these identities at her work, and also how her patients with similar identities are also impacted at work. So she talks about how racism impacts people. There's like numerous scenes that are absolutely horrible. But there's one where, like, I'm pretty sure it was a Black guy, and he's just like being really loud, and one of the nurses or doctors or somebody says, like, bro, be quiet, that's why you got shot. And then there's all sorts of encounters where she is calling people out for racist behavior, and they are just obviously not taking it well and saying they're not racist, because, you know, they weren't saying that because of the color of this person's skin. They were saying it for this other reason, and they have a Black friend or a Black cousin or whoever. She also talks about how her appearance and the appearance of her patients also impacts the care they get. And I've heard this a lot about how Black people have to look super nice, because if they were to show up somewhere the way I'm looking today in like sweats and a t-shirt, they're not going to get taken seriously, and they're not going to be viewed as like a knowledgeable nurse or a competent nurse or whatever. And like, obviously you wouldn't show up to work just wearing sweatpants, but you know what I mean? Like, if she went to a conference or whatever, she has to dress better than anybody else at that conference in order to be taken seriously. And same for her patients, that if they come in looking some kind of way, they could be not treated as well and not get the care that they need as well. It was interesting also to hear her talk about money, because this is something actually I've heard two people talk about at LitFest. The other one was Rita Woods, and they both talked about how sometimes if you are Black and you have money, you have to hide that money. You can't let white people know that you have money. And that is something that happened in this book, where there was a patient that came in with like a whole bunch of cash on her. And it was basically because she didn't want anyone to know that she had money, and that was like her way of like keeping it safe. Gender is also something. So this is Britney. She presents in a masculine sort of way. And so she's misgendered like all the freaking time. And like, people just can't be bothered when she corrects them. Like, they don't really seem to feel guilty for misgendering her. They just like, oh, well, if you dress like that and you look like that, it's your fault, I misgendered you. And they don't like come out and say that. At least I don't, maybe they do. But it's their mindset, I guess. And same for other patients as well. So like, all these things kind of go both ways between her experience as a nurse and her patient's experience as well. She also talks about sexuality and like how she has previously not been given the best care because she doesn't sleep with men, and yeah, other people have similar like experiences because things are just assumed based on their sexuality rather than actually giving them the medical care they need. And so I just think that this is really a really good book for anybody to read. If you're in healthcare, definitely you should read it. Just because I always think it's awesome to try and take someone else's perspective and to learn from somebody that follows a different path than you. And with that being said, like, I'm not Black, I'm not a nurse, but I identified so much with Britney. There was this one part, let me see if I can find it. Okay. Like, Britney is like, we're so connected. Okay. She was placed into the orientation group with staff nurses and would undergo 1 entire week of classroom orientation with them. I love being able to sit in the conference room and learn all day and get paid for it. She is not kidding. That's like legit what she said, and that is legit my life. Like, if I could just learn all day and get paid for it, I would love that. Like, I do the nerdiest things to learn and grow, and like reading this book is one of them, because am I in a medical profession? No, I'm not. But it's just something I'm really, really curious about. I'm so fascinated about the human body that I often read like medical memoirs and stuff like that, just because it's a career that I didn't go into and I probably don't have time to go into, but it's something I'm super curious about. So yeah, just by reading this book, I'm like connecting to that bit of like constantly learning and growing. Yeah, and like who she is as a person is just absolutely beautiful as well. I met her at Lit Fest. I had previously talked to her a bit online. First of all, rewind. Hannah, I will link her below. She's the one that basically told me to go and meet Britney, because I put the list of speakers on YouTube, and I was like, okay, like who should I see? Because I had key people I wanted to see, but there's people like I didn't know that I didn't know, you know, like who do I need to see that I don't know about? And Hannah said Britney. And so previous to Lit Fest, I went online and found her Instagram, started following her, and then just messaged her like, oh my gosh, I saw you were at Lit Fest, I'm so excited to meet you. Which I didn't tell her is basically because Hannah raved about her, but that's why. And then she like posted like that day, like, oh, 2 more hours or something like that, and I was like, I'll be there. And so when she came out on stage, she actually waved to me, and that was like instant connection. Like, I just love you so much. And then in the signing lane, blah, blah, blah. I can't speak because I'm not very well today. In the signing line, she gave me like the most giant hug, and yeah, I like love her forever. So yeah, I'm gonna put some clips at the end of this that will give you a little bit of a little taste of what her author event was like, and to allow you to get to know her. Oh my gosh. But I do want to wrap this up with one more quote, which I think is like really it's like why she wrote this, and it's basically talking about how bias impacts everybody. It impacts her as a nurse, it impacts patients, and yeah, it's just not cool. Not only does implicit bias towards healthcare workers damage the worker, it damages the patient. Nowadays, I reflect on how patients have suffered due to secondhand bias. It's like living with a smoker and getting lung cancer without ever touching a cigarette. Internal bias and structural racism plague hospital and healthcare facilities across the nation. We are long overdue for a transformation.
And we can get into this later about why people overuse the emergency department for things that they could go to the dentist for, or they could go to their doctor's office for. It's really not that black and white, it's not that simple. So folks who don't have access to primary care, or might not have access to dental care, they come to the ER, because that's really the catch-all. And so this person came to the ER for dental pain. They had tried all of their home remedies, baking powder, baking soda. I don't know the difference between the two, to be honest with you. That's I have a master's degree, I don't know the difference. But he was using those things to try to relieve his pain, and it didn't work. He was still in pain, right? So he came to the hospital. He's at the hospital, and what the doctors did was they injected his gums with numbing medicine. And that gave him relief that he hadn't had in a week. So he fell asleep, right? So imagine, you're in the emergency department, you finally have relief from the pain that you've been having continuously for days. You fall asleep, but then imagine waking up from that sleep and your clothes are being removed from your body. Your belongings are being taken away from you. Okay, just imagine that. Imagine how jarring and terrifying that is. For just a second. All right, so I'm walking down the hallway. I see a bunch of security guards outside of the room. I see a very tall black gentleman yelling, "Give me my stuff," right? Turns out, because he was so sleepy, they assumed he was on drugs. And so because he was on drugs, they had to take all his stuff and lock it up and move him to the psych unit. I don't know how we got from A to B, right? But that's a lot of assumptions being made. And so this gentleman is upset, physically upset, because his things are being taken from him for absolutely no reason. But I see the staff responding to his upset in a way that I can tell is going to put him in danger, right? So what does that look like? That looks like security getting called, security using tasers, security using restraints, security calling the police coming, the police tasing, the police arresting. And so this man ends up in jail, all because of a misunderstanding, right? And I could see all that happening. I could see it all happening like a Final Destination, right? Like you can just see it all happening before it even happens. So instead I intervened. I went and I whispered in his ear. I told him, they're scared of you. And you're yelling. That's making them more scared of you. You're big, you're tall, and you're black. You can't yell at me. That puts your life in danger. So I became the mediator between the staff and his patients. I was the one who was able to explain to them that white powder you saw on his clothes, it wasn't cocaine, it was baking soda that he was trying to use to relieve the pain that he was having in his mouth. And maybe if you had woken him up and asked him that, we wouldn't be here right now, right? So we were able to safely get his belongings back to him. Once he was awake, he was completely reasonable, and I escorted him outside of the emergency department with referrals to go see a dentist that he didn't have to pay for. It gasses me up. It literally makes me want to like get up, go sit down at my desk and just start like making a Canva post. Like it literally fuels me. And I know that's not good fuel. It's like regular gas as opposed to premium. I know it's not good for me in the Cadillac, because this is a Cadillac. It's not good for me, but it still keeps me going. So no, I'm not tired yet. And if I ever get there, I'll tell you. But for now, I have a lot of gas in the tank and I plan on using it.